Good morning. Hi. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kristen. I am the Programming and Communications Manager here for the church. I would like to invite you to do two things before we get started. One, yes, I hear it. Can we please silence our cell phones? Nobody wants to be that guy. And I can assure you, if you do want to be that guy, the person sitting next to you does not want you to be that guy. The second thing I would like to invite you is to join me in giving an acknowledgement. We gather together today with gratitude, and we acknowledge that we gather together today on the unceded land belonging to the Montaukets, the Manhassets, and the Shinnecock nations. They still exist. They are a vital part of our community, and we are very grateful to them. So may the respect for our ancestral spirit of this land and each other be what lead us forward. Our Insight Sunday speaker is part of our current exhibition called Here and There, the First Churchennial, which celebrates our first 3 years of the Artist in Residency program. And she was one of our first artists in residence. We were going back and forth this morning. We weren't sure exactly where in the placement, but the beginning years of our artist residency program. And it has blossomed over the years. Additionally, she is our neighbor and an active member of the church community, and we enjoy having her here. In addition to her residency here at the church, Mary Ellen has also participated in several artist residencies here in New York, at the Queens Museum, the Visual Studies Workshop up in Rochester, and the Watermill Center. She has also participated in international residencies at the Lagerfeld Library in Paris and the Casa Morandi in Italy. Her work has been included in collections at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, MoMA's Library Special Collections, the Morgan Library and Museum Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, and the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, and the Mambo Museum of Modern Art in Bologna. Her artistry has garnered invitations to work in the libraries of celebrated artists such as the experimental theater director and artist Robert Wilson, painters Lee Krasner and Jackson Pollock, designer and bibliophile Karl Lagerfeld, and of course, the 20th-century master whose quiet, still life paintings have been an essential source of her inspiration from the beginning of her practice, Mr. Giorgio Morandi. So, now here to speak to you all about that process, Miss Mary Ellen Bartley.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen, and thank you so much for all being here. I know so many of you. We have an amazing community, and thank you to the church. Wow, what a place, right? We are so lucky to have this place to gather and to have our own art church. So thank you to everyone who makes this place possible. And when I come here, I really enjoy listening to artists talk about their work, because they give us a path into their work and their thinking that we probably never would have gotten to on our own. And sometimes they're really good at showing how one thing leads to another. And I always find that inspiring and interesting. So today, I'd like to share with you my journey, a version of my journey to and from my project, Morandi's Books. And I'd like to start on Fifth Avenue. So it's 2008. It's the height of the recession, and I'm standing outside the Metropolitan Museum. And I'm having like a big feeling. I'm having a big thought. I've been a commercial freelance photographer, shooting mostly photography of food and still life, working for magazines, and I'm pretty much out of work. Magazines are closing left and right, and the world's really changing, and somehow I feel I am changing. I've just left this incredible exhibition. One of my favorite artists, Giorgio Morandi, is retrospective. And I'm realizing, I think I've only seen his work in books and in slides at art school. And in this show, there's over 100 of these enigmatic, quiet, sometimes confounding paintings. And I'm really affected by this kind of visual feast. And I'm reminded of my first encounter with Morandi and how I felt so inspired, and I felt that there was all this possibility in such modest, kind of quavering work. And I was remembering way back then I felt this connection, and I wanted to hold on to that connection. And I left the museum with this really clear intention. I wanted to go and find my own set of objects that I could study and photograph and return to again and again. And so I did. I went back and I tried a lot of things. I photographed bottles and books, and I even photographed plastic bags. And then I found these paperback books. I had been at a friend's house, and she had a stack of paperbacks without any of the spine showing, and there was this black remainder line. And something clicked for me. It looked so intentional and like it had a lot of possibility. So I went back and I gathered all my paperback books, and I found this really simple table near a window that had some nice natural light, and I started working with them. And I really liked the geometry, but it was kind of a imperfect, papery geometry. And I found this incredible palette there. I had no idea that pages of books, that the paper would have so much color. And I also really liked how quiet they were. I mean, here we know that books contain so much information and stories and narrative, yet we don't see it here. It's held back, it's muted, and the palette is muted. And I like that. And I continued the series, and I actually still do. I mean, sometimes I take out these books and I start working with them because it's kind of my photo therapy. I find it really grounds me and it calms me, and it's nice to have something like that to return to. And I keep finding different ways of arranging them and working with them. And another thing, when I was doing this series, I was spending a lot of time with the prints. I wanted the prints to have some, ineffable quality that I hadn't seen in prints before and photographs. So I liked making them mysterious in that, are they photographs or are they paintings or drawings? So that's something I think about a lot. So then I'm working with books, I'm seeing books all over, and I'm thinking about them differently. So it was easy for one series to lead to another. When I was standing the books up on their sides, they kind of splayed open, and I love these stripes that I found, and then how whatever was inside was just kind of hinted at. So I took all my photograph books, my photography books, which I have a lot of, and I started looking at them in this close-up way. And I really liked the way I could control what was revealed and what was concealed, which is kind of a theme in my work that I go back to. Then I worked in a totally different palette than the paperbacks with these blue books, and it was a completely different mood, probably done in a different season. Probably started in November when the days are really short. And in this series, Reading in Color, I had gone and just collected all these pulp fiction paperbacks, mostly from the Strand in the city. And it was really kind of a hunt to find how many different colors I could find. And I was tempted to work, with these amazing covers, these campy, great pulp fiction covers and their contents, but I had a lot of restraint and kept it to just stacking the colors of the dyed pages. So by this time, I've done a number of series, and I start to show my work in galleries. I have the Drawing Room in East Hampton and Yancey Richardson in New York. And I start to be invited to group shows in museums, art centers. It's a really nice life. It's going nicely. And then I have a challenge. I've been invited to the Watermill Center, and I have an artist residency there. And it's the first time I'm going to photograph someone else's books that I haven't chosen. And I have to try to find some visually interesting way to make a project there. And in the library, I start to find that there are so many books that have a lot of Post-its and bookmarks and annotations in them that Bob Wilson has left. So I focus on those, and I make a project photographing them. And I really love the way they become an illustration of how artists build on art that's come before, and that we learn from other artists and borrow from other artists. And this has probably happened since the beginning of time, but it's really illustrated here with these bookmarks, and it's very different now with the internet. One of the really nice things that came out of this residency is I was able to make a book about the project, a place where the project could live and be contained, and it was a book of books. And it was satisfying to me that this book about that library would sit on the shelves of that library. It was kind of a nice little nesting idea. And I really do want to make book. Ideally, I would make a book of every project. I really love that circularity of starting with books and ending with a book. After Watermill, my practice really was split between me doing things in the studio and then doing things in different libraries. I worked at the Polly Krasner House, and in 2017, I did a project at Great Gardens before the house was sold. And I also worked at a library that was at the Queen's Museum. And in 2016, I was having a show, an exhibition in Vienna, and there was a photo festival going on at the time, and I met a fellow photographer, Sonia Lenzi. And Sonia said, "Mary Ellen, your work reminds me of Giorgio Morandi." And Sonia is from Bologna, like Morandi, so she should know. And she said, "Oh, I think you should come and have a show at the Morandi Museum." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, right, okay. Like, that's going to happen. Good idea." It seemed completely far-fetched, but very sweet of her to say. But I really did want to go to Bologna and make my pilgrimage to Morandi's studio that so many artists do. So about 2 years later, I go to Bologna, and Sonia arranges for us to have this private tour of Casa Morandi. Now, Casa Morandi is the apartment that Giorgio Morandi spent most of his life in. He lived there with his 3 unwed sisters and mother, and now it's been turned into a kind of museum where his studio is preserved as if he just walked out and is coming back soon. And the rest of the apartment has exhibits about him and different objects and things relating to his life. It's another view of his studio, which is pretty magical. So as we're having this tour, we come, let's just stay here for a second. We come into this room where there's all these cabinets and they're closed, and I go to Lorenza, the curator. I say, Lorenza, what's inside the cabinets? And she says, well, that's Morandi's library. That's his personal library. And I'm just like, wow. I really was struck by some electrical current and started shaking probably, and I just felt this this whole idea project flash before me. But I had to really contain myself, and I said, Sonia, do you think maybe I could propose a project working with these books? And she said, oh, yeah, you could write a proposal to the director. And so I did. And I had a little help from someone here in the audience, Erica, helped me write my proposal, and I sent it, and I guess 2 years later, in February 2020, I began a project at Casa Morandi. And it was February 2020, and I have a little film about it that explains more of it in a perhaps more entertaining way. So I'm going to let the film run, and then I'll take it from there. Here's the film. I first learned of Giorgio Morandi through books at art school. And then many years later, when I saw his work in person, I was inspired to find my own objects that I could study and photograph again and again. I discovered these paperback books. My photographing of books began. After many series, one leading to another, I started to be invited to work in different libraries. I became fascinated with artist libraries and exploring the connection between artists and their books. The first time I visited Casa Morandi, I was thrilled to discover that Giorgio Morandi's books are housed there. I really wanted to work with them. Two years later, I returned to start a project there. It was like a dream. But the pandemic was closing down northern Italy. I had to leave.
Were taken as two of the nation's biggest states joined a third in ordering all non-essential workers to stay home.
I was frustrated by my unfinished project, and I wanted to find a way to keep working on it until I could return to Bologna. I started slowly by adding pieces of paper, collaging them into the photograph, and then rephotographing the collage. And then I remembered that a lot of the older volumes in the library had these very beautiful glassine covers that were now very fragile and yellowed. I found a book in my own library that had one of these covers, and I cut a piece of it and I taped the glassine to my computer monitor. I felt like it was a real key to the project, expressing this barrier and distance and fragility. I was able to return to Bologna in June of 2022. This time, I was able to combine Morandi's objects with his books. Besides the final photographs in the exhibition, I collected details of traces Morandi left. And those photographs, folded and bound together, extend and return the project to the book form, the form where I originally discovered Morandi. Yeah, so many of you saw that Nick Whelan made that film. There's actually a little more music in it, but because he's really into music. But, he's a great filmmaker, and I really think he's so talented. And I actually worked on a few other projects with him. He did a great video of my project at Great Gardens. So just to go over some of the things you saw in the film, you might have seen that there was some footage shot downstairs here. And in 2022, March, Sarah, who was here then, along with April and Eric, invited me to work downstairs. And it was really a game changer for me. Since the studio you saw in the film, I had moved to a very small house. Some of you know how small my studio is. And this really gave me the time and the space to tackle this unfinished project. And I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity. You also saw that I did return to Bologna in June of that year, and it was really wonderful. I mean, the pandemic was over, I think, in May, so right in June I went, and it was really wonderful to be able to be inside that inner studio you saw in Casa Morandi, and to actually handle and arrange and work with Morandi's objects, and to do it, like this is his studio table, and you can see all these lines and kind of cryptic things that he's drawn on his table. So it's just really special and something I really treasure. So when I was back the second time, there was a curator from the Museo Morandi. Maybe I'll just explain. So Casa Morandi is this apartment that has been restored and set up with some exhibition space. And then there's Museo Morandi, which is the Morandi Museum. And the Morandi Museum is in another location, has the largest collection of Morandi's work in the world. And it also is part of a larger institution, which is MAMBO, the Museum of Modern Art of Bologna. So a curator from Museo Morandi, Alessia Massi, became interested in the project, and she proposed doing an exhibition at Museo Morandi, and she wanted to include some of Morandi's paintings in the exhibition. And I was all for that. And we worked really hard to make it happen. And along with the show, the prints and Morandi paintings, there was Nick's film was shown in a sort of separate room within the galleries. And we also produced a catalog, and I was able to make an artist's book. You saw at the end of the film those folded images and pictures sort of that were outtakes, not the main photographs themselves that were in the exhibition, but I wanted them to have a place to be contained. And I could do a whole nother presentation about the book, but we don't have time. But I did, the book is and the catalog are out of print. I did bring some copies of them here for you to see, and some are for sale, and I'm sharing the proceeds with the church. So this is during the installation. I gotta say, it was just this unbelievable journey. I just couldn't even believe that this was happening and that my work was hung next to Giorgio Morandi. It's really been one of the probably most incredible honors of my life. And here, he's on the left, I'm on the right. Mine's bigger. Anyway, it really was. And I look back to that day, in 2008, and I'm having some kind of feeling and big idea, but I had no idea in my wildest dreams that it would lead to this. And that, that it would be so full circle. And to make the circle even a little bit more complete, there was a curator, a former curator at the Met, who purchased one of my photographs, and she brought the project to the attention of some curators who are there now, and they invited me to come and show them the work and tell them my story, and they chose a print from the series to add to the permanent collection at the Met. So that was really super satisfying. And I just, I really enjoy telling this story. I mean, because I think it's incredible. It's a little bit edited here and there, of course, like all stories, but I hope that's a bit inspiring in the ideas of following those really strong feelings we have sometimes, like in our gut. And sometimes we're reminded of connections we had at different times in our lives that maybe we should pay attention to again. And sometimes there's opportunities that we need to be ready for whenever they happen. So thank you so much.
At this time, we would like to open up the floor for any questions. Are there any questions from the audience? All right, please wait for the microphone.
Oh, God. No, I think we need to pick someone else.
No, I have a question. I have a question. You elevate his books almost to the level of his bottles, and I'm wondering what Morandi thinks about his books.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons when I had that sort of lightning bolt feeling when the cabinet was open is that I kind of sensed and later really learned that books were so important to Morandi because he famously didn't travel much, even though he had a lot of friends who were intellectuals, and Bologna is a university town. He wasn't provincial, but he didn't travel the world, and he really traveled in his books a lot. I mean, most of his books were art books, very few literary books, a lot poetry and art books. That would say, with the bulk of them being art books, and a lot of them were inscribed from friends because they knew how much he treasured books. So that's a whole nother level, that this person who didn't travel much could look at art from Paris. And, Cézanne was one of his favorite artists, and that was, there are the most volumes were of Cézanne.
In the beginning, when you first started putting books together, your books, to photograph them, they have a very painterly style. Is that a long exposure? It looks like you didn't use a tripod all the time, but you almost must have used a tripod to get that stillness.
I always use a tripod. The film is just fiction. I never just stood there.
Right. And what film did you use in those beginning ones?
No, this is all, I started out with a 4x5 camera when I started taking photographs. I never really used a 35. And it was always that kind of photography. But by this time, 2008, it's digital. I've already made this transition. And, that was part of the things that was happening in the world, that images and magazines, everything was changing. So I used digital cameras on a tripod. And really the painterly quality comes from the lighting, mostly, the natural light, and yeah.
I think we have time for just 2 more questions, so.
I'm struck by the stillness of the images, and I'm wondering whether there was any music in his or your life while you were contemplating or taking the photographs.
I don't think he listened to a lot of music, from what I've learned. He didn't have records in the apartment, but I think he did go in Bologna and listen to live music. I'm pretty sure he liked silence and quiet. And I like silence and quiet, but actually I'm listening to audiobooks when I work. I really love that. I love the combination of photographing books while listening to books. It works for me.
So I've never been to Casa Morandi. I love Morandi. And I have to say I got a little jolt of anxiety when I saw you rearranging his objects with your books, because my understanding was, and maybe I'm wrong, that the placement of his objects was so intentional, and any slight movement by his cleaning person or his sister or somebody would cause him distress when he'd go back into his studio. So
Well, he's not here now to do that.
So I was watching you do that and thinking, maybe my understanding is incorrect, but...
no, I got to tell you, it was incredible.
Yeah.
When I was first there, I was like, I had gloves on, and I was like, may I? And then the curator had to be in the studio with me, and she would come, and I'd say, I want that one, and she would come and bring it over, and I'd be, can you move it to the side? And then she was just like, I'm going to go out for a while. And I couldn't believe they were letting me do this, but I was very careful. But I just went to town. It was really, really incredible.
You feel like an intruder?
I learned that, Italians aren't quite as uptight about these kind of things. I think they figure, it'll all work out, and they trust you, and it felt that way. It felt a little more relaxed. So it worked out. It was great. And other people have done it besides me, I've learned later.
Thank you very much, Mary Ellen, and thank you to all of you for coming.